One extra little bit that we need to know about proportion on GCSE is a bit of a tricky one, because this is the thing that people forget, because we can't give you great big worksheets of this. It's just some facts that you need to know, and you need to make sure you're revised. So first of all, if I say y is proportional to x, for example, then that means y equals something times x. Now what does that look like if I draw it on a graph? Well, if you remember your y equals mx plus c, this is a straight line graph, isn't it? This is a straight line graph with a gradient of k. What's the y-axis intercept? So remember, look, y equals mx plus c. M is the coefficient of the x, that's the gradient. The c is where it hits the y-axis. Well, this is k times x plus nothing, isn't it? The y-axis intercept is nothing. So if x is proportional to y, or if y is proportional to x, if I put them on a graph, they'd look like this. So direct proportion on a graph looks like that, okay? In a lot of the algebraic questions, you get something like y is proportional to x squared. Well, that would mean y equals something k times x squared, okay? And what does that graph look like? Well, we know that y equals x squared is a graph that looks like this, okay? So if we just wanted to look at the positive part of it, y equals x squared would look like this. And if I did, instead of x squared, if I did 2x squared or 3x squared, it still gets the same general shape, because it's still a quadratic graph, isn't it? So y is proportional to x squared would look like this. Y is proportional to x cubed. Y is proportional to x cubed. Well, that would look like y equals k times x cubed. And if you've done this part of the GCSE course, you know that an x cubed graph looks like this. So if you're just looking at the positive values, we cross this bit out, y is proportional to x cubed, just in a little quick sketch, looks about the same as y is proportional to x squared, but this one will be getting bigger quicker usually, because it's an x cubed instead of an x squared. So y is proportional to x to the power of something would look like that. Now the other thing we missed off then is inverse proportion. Y equals, y is proportional to 1 over x is inversely proportional. That is y equals something divided by x. So what does a something divided by x graph look like? Well, if you haven't seen these yet, let's look at it in the positive x and positive y values part of the graph. When x gets big, what happens to y? Well, y gets smaller and smaller, doesn't it? Because this is something divided by x. So if x was 100, this would be something divided by 100. If x was a million, this would be something divided by a million. If x was a trillion, this would be something divided by a trillion. So the bigger x gets, the smaller y gets. So it does this. Now we never actually get to hit the x-axis, because you can't do k divided by something and actually get a 0. You just get smaller and smaller numbers. So if you've not met that idea before, it's called an asymptote. This curve gets closer and closer to this line, but never actually hits it. So we call it asymptotic. We say this line is an asymptote. What happens when x gets very small and close to 0? Well, that means y equals k divided by a small number. Okay, so k divided by 0.1, well, that would be, we're getting a big number there, aren't we? So if we imagine something like 5 divided by 0.1 is 50. 5 divided by 0.01 is 500. So the smaller I make the x number, the bigger y gets. Okay, so we're going to get the same thing here. We're going to get another asymptote on the y-axis. So if you've done this part of the course, you know that y equals something over x takes this shape, and that's the reason why. So y is proportional to 1 over x means the graph is going to look like this. Y is inversely proportional to 1 over x means the graph is going to look like this. Y is directly proportional to 1 over x means the graph is going to look like this. Y is proportional to x squared or x cubed means the graph is going to take this sort of a shape in the positive quadrant of the graph.